I moved into my apartment in 2013. These apartments are located somewhere in Roseville, Minnesota. I do apologize, but I will not disclose the name of the apartment that I live in. The area is not expected to be ghetto since the diversity of people here are older white Americans, so crime rate is lower than other parts of the neighboring areas of Minnesota. It's quite the suburban block. I work the afternoon to night shift from 2 to 10 p.m. I'm used to driving home in the dark and making my ways alone to my apartment at night. I often check my surroundings regardless, since I'm a super paranoid dude. An incident did happen to me when I was younger, which made it very jumpy whenever I go out alone. However, this event that I'm about to tell you, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was the week of the Minnesota State Fair. That night I came home from work later than usual, mostly to avoid the fair's traffic. It was a Tuesday night, and I wasn't off until 11 p.m. I got to my apartment at 11:40 p.m. The apartment has no elevator, so taking the stairs is a must since I live on the second floor. This apartment is a 3-level building. Before entering the building, right after I parked my car, I made my way to the glass door to buzz myself into the apartment. I saw one of my neighbors who I often see when I head to work at around 1 p.m. I don't know his name. He calls me buddy and I call him boss man, but we make small talks here and there. The most distinct feature about him is his long white-haired ponytail. To my understanding, he may have been Native American. He is always spotted smoking on this balcony, so that night he notices me struggling to get my access key and said sarcastically, "Working hard or hardly working?" I looked up, and since the balcony light was reflecting from behind him, I only saw his silhouette with his white hair and his cigarette amber. I just smiled and said, "Have a good night, boss man." I really wasn't trying to make small talk since I was tired from work. I was approaching my apartment door, and like I said, my habit is to always check my surroundings. I was struggling to get my keys into the keyhole when my brain suddenly screamed at me to check my surroundings. I then shifted my eye to the left towards where I came from and saw what I think is someone or something, a dark object peeking around the corner. Once I got the door open, I faced that direction, staring at the long hallway, hoping to get a glimpse of something or someone. To my surprise, there was nothing. I got a sudden chill down my spine and the heebie-jeebies that hit me very hard. I shrugged off my paranoia and went inside and called it a night. I remember when going to bed that I had a really hard time sleeping, so I left my bedroom apartment window cracked open to get the cooler summer breeze inside, hoping to fall asleep easier. I often get sleep paralysis due to the stress I get from home and from work. Since my folks and I still have shaman beliefs, I often have amulets and strings tied onto me for protection. I have an amulet hanging from the top of my closet in my bedroom. My eyes are closed but still awake, struggling to sleep. I then heard a low-toned thump from the closet. My eyes shot open, but I couldn't move. I thought, oh great, another episode, here we go again. But unlike most times when I fall asleep into sleep paralysis, I honestly don't see anything like shadows or dark figures. This time, however, it was very strange and creepy. I heard the closet door slide open and saw a black, shadowy hand make its way from the clothes in my closet, almost like it's trying to bring itself out from the abyss and into my room. I panicked hard and my body was just not able to move. During this time, my wife was next to me, so I tried my best to nudge her or grunt to make her move so I can break out of the paralysis. I tried and tried, but realized that it wasn't going to happen. That thing showed itself to me. A large 6 or 7 feet figure, as dark as the night, lingered over my body, and I could feel a strong pressure on my body. Suddenly, the amulet that was hanging from my closet door dropped to the floor and the thing vanishes. I gasped awake and looked around the room. The closet was closed, and the amulet remains on the closet. I slowly realized that I had already fell asleep, and it was probably just a nightmare. My wife works in the morning, so we have my sister-in-law come to our apartment every day to watch my 2 kids before I head to work. The next day, she mentions to me that there were EMTs and police officers that showed up yesterday while I was at work, and that one of the tenants was loaded onto the stretcher. I asked her if she remembered asking around or who it was and what that person looked like. She told me that she only saw an old male getting loaded on the stretcher. We talked for a little bit and I left for work. To my surprise, I didn't see that old man that lived on the upper level that tries to do small talks. The day before, it did not appear odd since the situation didn't cross my mind. I mean, every day is a different day and I don't expect him every time. The weekend came and I took my family to the apartment indoor pool for a swim. I ran into our landlord, who was super chill, and she told me that the old man John that lived on the 3rd level passed away Tuesday due to a heart attack. I said, "Was John the one with a white ponytail?" She explained, "Yep, that's the guy." I spoke to him Tuesday night when I was coming back home from work though. The 2 of us looked at each other, and she said that I must have seen someone else. John passed away Tuesday afternoon due to the heart attack, and the nurse that takes care of him was the one who dialed 911. I was surprised, but not scared. I can't shake the thought that I spoke to him before I entered the door to the apartment. This distracted me the whole weekend. Was the event that happened last night related to him passing? I wasn't too sure. That night, I slept easy and had a quick dream that Boss Man was in my apartment living room and was just standing looking at my TV while I was dressed like a pink Power Ranger trying to fight him. What a strange dream. I know. It was a weird, silly dream, but after waking up, I mentioned the conversation and the events to my wife, and I truly believed that it was Boss Man's ghost that I saw Tuesday night. Believe me or not, that's what I saw, and I could never forget that night's conversation. I'm just glad that was the only thing that happened and nothing else. But that figure I saw from the closet, I don't know what the heck it was, but I hope to never see it again. Here's some more stories from this viewer. His grandma passed away this year in 2023, the night of the first day after he left the funeral home in the same apartment. He was up using the bathroom. He usually leaves the door open since his kids would be up randomly to use the toilet at times. When he was doing his business, he could make out a silhouette head peeping at him from the dark living room. He freaked out and threw a toilet roll at the living room, and the silhouette head was still peeping at him. The light was off in the living room, but the silhouette was even darker, staring at him. And then it suddenly retracts its head back fast and vanished. He speculates that it was probably his grandma visiting him. Now, here's the last story that the viewer submitted. It's the reason why he's always paranoid. When I was younger, my family and I lived in the east of Phelan area in St. Paul. The house we were living in was a rambler home with a large basement. After the event of this story, I hated living at this house. Don't get me wrong, this house was a great place to grow up until I encountered this thing. It was never the same after that, but it's safe to say that it was the first and not the last time I ever encountered something so terrifying. I hope those folks who bought the home are safe and will never encounter this thing. I had always been an active and ambitious kid, so I led the groups whenever my cousins came over to play at our house. We had a family event that Saturday. All the cousins came over to help and enjoy each other's company. I again led the troop of children to play. We were all in the basement playing tag, and like all kids would do, we would start playing pretend. Power Rangers and Kamen Rider, dang, I haven't heard of Kamen Rider in a long time. This was a hit growing up, so we all pretended to be them. I noticed that two of the younger cousins, let's call them Aaron and Brian, were arguing to see who wanted to be the Red Ranger. I did this with my cousins too. Aaron and Brian were siblings and they were known to be brats among the group of kids. I was looking after about 7 to 9 kids at that time, and those two had a fight. Aaron ended up hitting Brian. Brian cried and left the basement. Once Brian left, the commotion of crying left all of us kids quiet and speechless. Everyone was worrying about, oh shoot, someone's gonna get us in trouble. Aaron and Brian's older sister, who was about 16 at the time, came down to confront us, and we were all pointing at Aaron. Aaron said that it wasn't him that hit Brian. Instead, he pointed at me. Since Brian was so much younger, he agrees with what everyone was telling him. The sister asked Brian who hit you, and Brian said that I did it. I was mad and scared of the sudden news that it made me freeze and looked guilty. Immediately, the older sister scolded me and drove most of the kids back upstairs. I stayed with the other two cousins and was upset, and I started crying. My older brother sleeps in one of the basement rooms. I knock on his bedroom door when he was playing the NES with the older kids. I told him that Aaron and Brian's sister yelled at me for no reason. He looked at me and just said, "Dude, you're okay, grow up already," and continued to play the NES. Well, that went well. I closed the door behind me. I came back around and found no kids in the basement. I had wiped my tears and sat on the sofa all by myself. Our basement had a black iron pipe that came from the upper bathroom to the basement. It had a section which I liked to climb and dangle on like a bat. I got off the sofa, which was directly from the iron pipe, and decided to dangle myself. My initial thoughts was that the cousins were going to come back down in a bit and see me hanging upside down, and hopefully this will bring back a cheerful mood to everybody. I started to climb and got my legs onto the pipe and started to dangle. As I was upside down, what I saw next gives me the nightmares till this day. It was a lady wearing all white and no eyes, with a long tongue sticking out, looking in my direction. That thing was directly from the sofa in which I was just sitting on earlier. I couldn't get down because I was so spooked. I shut my eye and screamed at the top of my lungs for my older brother. He heard my blood-curdling scream and came out to check out what was going on. This dude is so petty, he didn't even come over to check on me immediately. They saw me hanging upside down and from the pipe. From his room entrance, he said, "Dude, Dad already said to not climb on that since it was important to the sewage. Why on earth are you screaming?" Despite this, I couldn't talk and would not open my eyes. All I heard was my older brother yelling at the other boys to go get an adult. My grandma, who lived with us at the time, came down with one of my other aunties to comfort me and help me calm down. My grandma patted my head and held me. It was her sweet and comforting words that made me feel better. With my eyes shut, I still cried. I told my grandma that I saw a horrible monster in the basement pointing at nothing specific. My grandma told me to open my eyes and that she is here and that there's nothing to fear. One of the aunties grabbed an elder to come downstairs and he started to spit and scold at all the rooms and corners of the basement. I recalled him saying something like, "Whether you are a stray ghost or a family ghost, you are not to come and present yourself to this child. This child has done nothing wrong to you and you are to leave this area. If you do not, you will be sorry. If you are short, you will be 2 pieces. If you are long, you will be in 3. That's kinda gangsta. Stuff like OGs like to say. They tied a red string to me, and as gross as it sounds, my grandma and my uncle spat onto their palms and patted my head. After that incident, I fell asleep, waking up the next day. My grandma slept with me for the rest of the week since I had my own room. My parents eventually had a shaman to come and bless the house to get rid of this entity. We moved out of this house when I was in high school. I recalled asking my parents about that day I saw the thing in the basement. My dad said that, apparently, when the shaman came to bless the house, he said someone had hung themselves in the basement. They took their own life, hanging themselves on that black iron pipe. The reason why I was able to see her that day was because I was upside down. Because of this, I was able to grasp the vision between the ghost domains. When my parents bought the house, there was no known record on any deaths in the house either. What was strange was the day that I saw the thing was when we had a family gathering for the shaman to come to bless my parents before they left for Laos. Ever since that encounter, my parents left and we are doing well to this day. Thank you to the viewer who submitted this story. This is an awesome and fantastic story. Interested in sharing your stories? Submit them to HmongChronicles@gmail.com or in the description below. Here is the next story. Thank you. I have 2 stories relating to my mom and my sister. I'll start with my sister first. Ever since my dad passed away in 2001, my sister got really sick. At the time, we were preparing for my dad's funeral. My sister was in and out of the hospital for kidney failure. Well, from that time and on, until her transplant 3 years ago, every time she would go into the hospital, she would share a room with another person. For some odd reason, each roommate that she had, they would die in the same room with her. We never asked why or anything, but just kind of shrugged it off. Here's the next story about my mom. She was in this one hospital completely unknown to us. Well, my sister spent the first night with my mom at that hospital. She said that she would hear a noise like the one that The Grudge makes. Like that one. It sounded like it was coming from the vent. She couldn't sleep at all. The next day, I went and spent the night there. I didn't hear what my sister heard, but I did hear what sounded like the pipes that were making noises. However, that night, I couldn't sleep for some odd reason. Normally, I don't have the TV on when I'm in the hospital, but for that night, some reason, I did. I didn't think much of it. I just went on like it was nothing. That time, while my mom was in the hospital, we decided to watch scary movies at home. We watched the movie Emily Rose. Well, it sat well with me, but not my niece. For some reason, that movie woke something up in my niece. Ever since that time, my mom coming home from that hospital and watching that movie, something changed with my mom and my niece. My mom would start seeing bugs, and she would start to get sicker and sicker each day. She'd start to talk to herself too. It wasn't loud, but like a whisper. Sometimes you couldn't even make out the words. My niece, the one that changed a little, also started to notice things as well. After she would come over to our house, she would go home, and that night, she would get sat on. She would feel like there are little feet running all around her. When she was around my mom, she would hear the whispers and also get scared. Her and her younger sister and her brother would have dreams of bad spirits around my mother. At first, she didn't want to tell me all of this because she was afraid I'd get scared or that whatever was with her would come onto me. Apparently, whoever she told this to, things would happen to them. It happened to her brother, her sister, and her boyfriend. Knock on wood, but nothing has happened to me so far. Anyways, about my mom's whispers. There are times when you can't make out what she's saying. It's all gibberish and mumbo-jumbo. All I know is that there have been times where I would hear something sinister, but I was too tired to care. Anyways, it did scare my nephew's wife one morning. I was getting my mom ready for dialysis. I had to sit her down by the stairs. One of my nephew and his families came over to visit. They slept in the living room. Anyways, all of a sudden, the wife goes, "Oh, Auntie, did you hear that?" For a minute there, I got scared but answered, "Hear what?" She goes, "You don't hear it? It's coming from Grandma's room." I said, "Does it sound like gibberish talk?" She said, "Yeah." "Oh, it's just your grandma. It's coming from the stairs." The wife, gave me a questioned look and asks, "Are you sure? It really does sound like it's coming from Grandma's room." I nodded no and explained to her about how hearing is like sometimes. You think it's coming from one side, but instead, it really goes around you to another place, you know? But anyways, my mother's gibberish talk has scared a few people.